are the stories shaping the world this morning and why they matter. Ukraine is counting the dead and searching for the missing after one of Russia's largest overnight attacks in recent weeks, with Kyiv and Kharkiv both hit by missiles, drones, and glide bombs. Ukrainian officials said Russia launched 74 missiles and nearly 500 drones through Thursday, striking more than 30 sites in Kyiv alone. The death toll in the capital rose to at least 30, with more than 90 people injured, after rescuers pulled 3 more bodies from collapsed buildings overnight. 10 people were still missing. Among the injured was a 10-year-old boy, described as gravely hurt, while his parents remained unaccounted for. In Kyiv's Darnita district, officials said a building collapsed after a direct missile impact. Rescue teams continued working through debris as families waited for news, and more than 70 foreign diplomats, including ambassadors and envoys, visited damaged areas in the capital. Japan's ambassador said he was deeply shocked and said Japan stands with Ukraine. Kharkiv officials said Russian glide bombs killed 1 person and wounded 32 others. Russia's defense ministry said it targeted military and energy facilities in Kyiv and other locations, describing the strikes as retaliation for Ukrainian attacks on civilian infrastructure in Russia. Ukraine said it had hit 2 Russian airfields in Russian-occupied Crimea. Russian authorities and occupation officials claimed at least 10 people were killed overnight in Ukrainian strikes, including deaths at a market in Russian-occupied Zaporizhia region. For ordinary Ukrainians, the latest assault means another night in shelters, another morning of broken windows, damaged power systems, and families waiting outside rescue zones. For people in affected Russian-held areas, the risks are also direct and civilian. The wider pattern remains grimly familiar. Attacks on cities, claims of military targets, and civilians paying the immediate price. In Venezuela, rescuers pulled a security guard alive from the rubble of a shopping mall in La Guaira nearly 8 days after twin earthquakes struck the country on June 24th. The man, reported to be 43 years old, had been trapped in a basement air pocket. Rescue workers gave him water and food while they worked to reach him, and a doctor who treated him called the survival a miracle. Search teams reportedly spent more than 100 hours freeing him. The rescue brought a rare moment of relief in a disaster that has left thousands dead. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez said 2,595 deaths had been confirmed, while other official reporting put the toll at 2,300 and expected it to rise. La Guaira has been among the hardest-hit areas, with the largest number of collapsed buildings. The earthquakes, both above magnitude 7, left neighborhoods short of food and water, complicating relief efforts and slowing searches. Volunteers continued combing through rubble 8 days after the quakes, even as many operations shifted from rescue to recovery. In the harbor, hundreds of coffins were gathered in what residents described as an open-air morgue. Families have criticized the early response, with some saying people died while waiting for help during the first 4 days. Rodriguez denied that the government acted too slowly. The disaster is now testing more than emergency services. It is testing public trust, local health systems, supply chains, and the ability to shelter families who lost homes, shops, and relatives at once. The survival of 1 man after days underground shows the value of persistence by rescue crews, but it also highlights why faster disaster response, safer construction, and clear communication can determine who lives long enough to be found. In Iran, a week of prayers, ceremonies, and processions has begun for Ali Khamenei, who was killed in a U.S.-Israeli strike on February 28th. The state funeral opened at Tehran's Grand Mosalla Mosque, starting 7 days of memorial events that are expected to span 5 cities across Iran and Iraq before burial in Khamenei's hometown of Mashhad on July 9th. Khamenei was 86. He was elected supreme leader in 1989 and held final authority over Iran's foreign policy, military direction, and key state institutions for decades. His rule was also marked by violent crackdowns, deep political control, and severe limits on dissent. That legacy is reflected in the divided public response. Many Iranians have stayed away, while others have come out for official mourning. Millions of mourners are expected during the ceremonies and processions. Foreign leaders attended the opening in Tehran, including Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Army Chief Asim Munir. Their presence underlines Iran's continuing regional importance at a moment of heightened instability after the strike that killed Khamenei. For Iranian families, workers, and students, the immediate concern is what comes next. Whether the transition deepens confrontation or opens space for more stability. State ceremonies may project continuity, But daily life in Iran has long been shaped by sanctions, inflation, social restrictions, and political pressure. The coming days will be closely watched not only by governments, but by ordinary Iranians who have lived with the consequences of the country's internal and external conflicts. Japan and India have moved to deepen their partnership, with Japan's Prime Minister Takayuki wrapping up a 3-day visit to India on Friday after summit talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi. The two leaders focused on economic security, energy, defense, and investment, and issued a joint statement that voiced serious concern about coercion and economic security, widely read as a reference to China. The visit produced about 130 business-to-business deals. Japanese companies are planning to invest about $12 billion, mainly in areas identified as summit priorities. Sanaya said the public and private sectors should work together to carve out the future of Japan and India. Indian officials said ties with Japan are an extremely high priority, and Indian media reaction was described as overwhelmingly positive. India's market of more than 1.4 billion people is a major draw for Japanese firms. New investment could support advanced manufacturing, infrastructure, clean energy, and technology jobs if projects are carried out with strong labor standards and local benefits. India wants more Japanese business activity and advanced technology to support growth and employment, while Japan is looking for trusted partners and resilient supply chains. Energy security is also central. India imports a large share of its liquefied natural gas and liquefied petroleum gas from Middle Eastern countries across the Arabian Sea. A deeper relationship with Japan could help India diversify technology, financing, and infrastructure as it tries to grow while managing the costs and risks of global energy dependence. Security cooperation was also a major theme in the India-Japan summit. The joint statement identified advances in the defense and security partnership as a priority, and an Indian government official called that inclusion significant. India is dealing with a long-running border dispute with China, as well as a territorial dispute with Pakistan over Kashmir. Japan, meanwhile, has promoted the vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific as China expands its maritime presence in the East China Sea, the South China Sea, and the Indian Ocean. For New Delhi, closer security ties with Tokyo are part of a broader effort to build partnerships without relying on any single power. For Tokyo, India is an increasingly important democratic partner in a region where sea lanes, supply chains, and energy routes affect everyday economic life. The practical question is whether security cooperation can reduce risk rather than simply add tension. For ordinary people, this matters because maritime disputes and border standoffs are not abstract. They can affect fuel prices, trade routes, factory orders, and public spending. Cooperation that improves crisis communication, disaster response, Coast Guard coordination, and defense transparency can help protect stability. The challenge for both governments is to strengthen deterrence while keeping diplomacy open. Ukraine is also looking to Japan for deeper defense-related cooperation and long-term reconstruction support. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha spoke in Tokyo on Thursday and thanked Japan for what he described as $20 billion in financial aid. He called Japan one of Ukraine's closest allies and said Ukraine is ready to share experience and technology with Japan. Sybiha emphasized Ukraine's rapid innovation in drone technology, calling the country a global power in that field after years of battlefield adaptation. He said Ukraine is ready to co-produce with Japan, a message aimed at both government and industry. He also urged Japanese businesses to join efforts to rebuild Ukraine. The appeal reflects a shift in how Ukraine is presenting itself to partners. It is not only asking for aid, it is offering lessons in civil defense, drones, resilient infrastructure, and emergency technology. For Japanese companies and workers, reconstruction could mean opportunities in housing, energy systems, transport, and digital tools. For Ukrainians, it could mean repaired schools, safer power grids, rebuilt hospitals, and jobs in communities damaged by war. The immediate need remains security, but the longer goal is a country that can recover with modern infrastructure and stronger international ties. Canada and the Philippines have agreed to strengthen security and trade ties as Manila deepens partnerships during territorial disputes with China in the South China Sea. The leaders discussed peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, with Canada emphasizing increased regional engagement under its Indo-Pacific strategy. The Philippines has been building closer defense relationships with partners as tensions continue around disputed waters, fishing grounds, and maritime routes. In November, Manila and Ottawa signed a Status of Visiting Forces agreement. That pact is expected to help the two armed forces train together and operate more closely. For the Philippines, such agreements are part of an effort to protect maritime rights and support its Coast Guard and armed forces. For Canada, they fit a strategy of playing a more active role in the region. The leaders also agreed to strengthen bilateral trade. Canada is trying to diversify its economy while facing a difficult trade relationship with the United States. For Filipino workers, farmers, and exporters, stronger trade ties could open new markets if agreements are inclusive and enforceable. For Canadian businesses and consumers, diversification can reduce overdependence on any single trading partner. The key will be making security cooperation serve stability, while ensuring trade benefits reach households and not only large firms. Thailand has introduced a new information sharing system with the United Nations and 10 countries to investigate online scams, money laundering, human trafficking, and forced labor in scam compounds across the region. Thai police announced the SHIELD system with cooperation from partners including Japan, the United States, and China. The system is designed to share the locations of fraud centers using IP addresses and provide information about illicit financial flows, helping investigators trace criminal networks. Thai officials said the aim is to eradicate criminal bases in the region. Authorities have uncovered fraud compounds in Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos, where facilities equipped with computers and internet connections are used to systematize online fraud. The human cost is central. Many people taken to these compounds are not willing criminals. They are trafficked, trapped by false job offers, or forced under threat to run scams targeting people in other countries. The SHIELD system is intended to help identify those locations and rescue people held against their will. For families across Asia and beyond, these scams can wipe out savings, deepen debt, and create shame that prevents victims from reporting crimes. For the people forced to carry them out, the compounds can mean imprisonment, violence, and unpaid labor. A coordinated system that follows money, locations, and trafficking routes is a constructive step, but it will depend on cross-border enforcement, victim protection, and prosecution of the networks that profit. In Japan, the city of Atami has marked the anniversary of the July 3, 2021 mudslide that killed residents and displaced families, while bereaved relatives continue to demand accountability. Dozens attended a city memorial service where victims' names were read and a moment of silence was observed. The disaster was triggered by the collapse of an illegally constructed landfill upstream. Families of the victims say responsibility lies not only with the company involved, but also with government authorities that should have prevented the danger. One bereaved family member said the case should be treated as a crime, not dismissed as a natural disaster. Tanaka Koichi, who lost his wife Michiko, continues to visit the site of their former home every month. His grief reflects the long aftermath of disasters that are intensified by poor oversight and unsafe development. For survivors, recovery is not only about rebuilding roads and houses, it is about trust, accountability, and the assurance that the same failures will not be repeated. Reconstruction remains delayed. Work including road rebuilding and river improvements is 2 years behind schedule, and the city says 25 people from 12 households are still displaced. 4 years on, families are still living with the consequences of decisions made upstream. The memorial is a moment of mourning, but also a reminder that prevention, regulation, and transparent responsibility are public safety issues. Authorities in Monaco are seeking a Ukrainian woman living in Germany in connection with a remote-controlled bombing that wounded Ukrainian oligarch Vadim Yermolayev and 2 others on Monday. Monaco authorities issued a red notice for Anastasia Berezovska, a 39-year-old Ukrainian woman. Police in Hesse, Germany, raided her home and searched her vehicle. The explosive device was activated remotely. Yermolayev was wounded, and 2 others were injured, with some reports saying they were family members. Investigators initially described the suspect as a man wearing a fishing hat, but a review of security evidence pointed to a woman with medium-length brown hair and a noticeable tattoo. Authorities cited suspected attempted murder, placing an explosive device in a public place with criminal intent and criminal conspiracy. Investigators also cited evidence of an extensive stakeout before the bombing. The case has drawn attention because it involves an attack in one of Europe's most tightly secured enclaves and a target with links to Ukraine's wealthy business class. For residents and workers in Monaco, the immediate issue is public safety and shared spaces. For European law enforcement, the case shows how cross-border cooperation matters when suspects, victims, and evidence may be spread across multiple countries. The investigation is still developing, and the central questions remain motive, planning, and whether others were involved. In Beijing, local authorities say a light aircraft crash that killed the pilot and injured 13 other people involved a 66-year-old man whose diary suggested he intended to end his life. The crash happened on June 26th in Chaoyang District. The district government said the pilot lived alone in Beijing and had long suffered from insomnia and anxiety. The aircraft struck the city tower, described as Beijing's tallest building, about 6 kilometers from Tiananmen Square and the Zhongnanhai compound, where Communist Party leadership offices are located. The pilot was killed, and 13 people were injured. Posts about the incident were removed from Chinese social media, limiting public discussion of what happened and why. The case raises difficult questions about mental health, aviation safety, and public transparency. If authorities' account is accurate, it shows how untreated or poorly supported psychological distress can become a public safety risk. For the injured and their families, the priority is medical care and answers. For the wider public, the removal of discussion may deepen uncertainty rather than reduce it. Clear reporting, careful investigation, and better mental health access are all part of preventing future harm. In Thailand, a pickup truck crashed into a Buddhist procession, killing at least 10 monks and injuring 4 others. The victims were taken to a nearby hospital. A surviving monk said the truck came extremely close and that he jumped into a roadside ditch with another senior monk to avoid being hit. Police took a boy into custody after reports that he had used his father's vehicle without permission. Investigators are now working to determine how the crash happened and whether additional charges will follow. For the local community, the loss is both personal and spiritual. Monks often play central roles in daily life, offering guidance, conducting ceremonies, and supporting families through grief. A procession is meant to be a public act of faith and community, not a place of danger. The case also points to a broader road safety concern: access to vehicles, supervision of minors, and the consequences of even one reckless decision. Families of the dead now face mourning, funeral arrangements, and unanswered questions, while the injured begin recovery. Follow for a daily world brief. Sources are linked in the description. Oh, that's the world, as Minerva saw it.